A lot of us think of art as a hobby or a fun thing to do, but not so many are lucky enough to make it into their profession.
Hey, I'm Becca with the Happy Ever Crafter, and today I am interviewing one of my favorite artists in the whole world. I'm not even kidding. I have been obsessed with Sabeena's work for years, and I've been trying to get her to come on this show and teach us a lesson for a very long time, and I'm so excited that she's finally here. You guys are going to love this. It is so different than what we normally do, but also related, and I think you're really going to enjoy giving it a try. Actually, one quick note before we jump in. You might notice that Sabeena's sound is a little bit muffled in the beginning, in the intro. She's in India. Our connection wasn't great, but you will notice that in her actual lesson, the sound is totally clear. So don't worry too much about that. The lesson itself is totally fine. So let's do this thing. Sabeena, I'm so excited to have you on here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Like I say to a lot of my guests that I'm excited to have them on, but I have literally been obsessed with your work for like 5 years. I just like stalk your page and I'm constantly in awe of what you do. But for anybody who's watching that doesn't know right away who you are, can you give us a little rundown of who you are and what it is that you do?
Yes, of course. Firstly, thank you so much. I had no idea that's how you feel and you've been seeing my work for so long. So primarily, I'm a paper artist who focuses on creating very fancy typography using purely paper, 100% paper in different ways, be it strips, be it layers. So yeah, I'm a paper artist.
I got to actually learn from you and take one of your lessons at Letter West last year. And I remember in your talk, you spoke about how in India, it's like not really a thing to be an artist. And you really had to sort of like forge your own path to do that.
Basically, over here, when you think about pursuing a career, art is not a very common career path to choose because we're mostly into academics and maybe science, engineering, computers, IT. That's like the more common career path to choose. So you may be an artist on the side, but you will very rarely find someone who is like 100% pure artist first and then doing something side by side because of the perception that art has. It's considered more as a hobby. It's considered more like something to pass your time, not something that gives you money or not something that you do professionally. Because a lot of us think of art as a hobby or a fun thing to do, but not so many are lucky enough to make it into their profession.
And you have very much made it into your profession. Like, I think you're humble, but like you do work for Google and like huge giant companies seek you out to do work for them. And people are going to be like, excuse me, you can do that with paper quilling and like paper crafts. I remember it shocked me when I saw it because your work is so amazing, but you just don't normally associate like a paper crafter with Google. You know what I mean? Like, it's just amazing to me.
Yeah, it still doesn't sink in for me as well. But I think like with photography and with technology, you can actually transform something which is 3D into something which can go on screen. So you have all of that which is there to help you out.
Yeah, I think when people see what you're about to show us in your lesson, they'll understand why a certain project could take up to a month because like especially some of yours, they're so elaborate and amazing, like mind blowing actually when you see them. And I'm sure you'll show us some, but I truly think that people will understand why it takes so long, but at the same time, why it's so enjoyable and meditative. Like I remember when I did it at Letter West, I felt like I could do it all day because I was so in the zone and just like really enjoying. And I'm not a super meticulous person, but I loved doing it. So I'm really excited for people to see your lesson. So maybe I'm just going to take my face off and let you jump into it, and then I'll ask you a million more questions afterwards.
Yes.
Okay, so to begin with, I thought I'll show you a few examples of some of my work just for you to get an idea of how it looks when I'm holding it in my hand. This is just a simple letter that I have constructed. It could be a W, it could be an M with strips of paper. My technique is somewhat like an offshoot of quilling and paper sculpturing, layering. I can't really put a name to what I do. This is a pretty tactile piece which is made with vertical, horizontal strips of paper. You can see all the layers. I use corrugated sheets underneath to give it a height. So sometimes the pictures don't really do justice to what I create. This is another piece as well, sort of an illusion of, giving depth. And a more elaborate piece here is this. It has a lot of paper sculpturing, layering, shadow work, some quilling as well. I'm going to run you through some of the tools that I use. First and foremost, I need a pencil to make drawings. Then the most important thing is a quilling needle which has a slot for you to insert paper inside it. Then I also use an X-Acto knife to make paper strips. I use these cocktail skewers which are very helpful in shaping some of the paper strips or some of the layers of paper. Then I use a tweezer. This is for just kind of going in on those very intricate pieces and gluing things down. And another most important thing is glue. I use any white glue. In addition to that, there's a self-healing mat which is very important to use while creating paper related projects, and some colored sheets of paper. Let me show you how I cut my paper strips. This is quite a thick paper. It would be approximately 250 to 300 GSM. And now I'll just demonstrate to you how I use these cocktail skewers to kind of just press with my fingers and give it like a curved shape. It's the reinforcement which you apply. The more swiftly you do it, you get more of the arc, and that kind of helps you to mold the strip and give it a particular shape. I feel like creating daisies for you today, so I'm gonna do D for daisies. It's just a very rough D using the serif typeface because somehow I find it quite artistic. Just roughly placing a couple of daisies. Maybe a few here and here. Another one here. Yeah. I decided to use a blue paper for this so that there'll be a bit of a contrast, and I have also drawn out my letter along with the design in white, so it has the main elements. I want to do the two main flowers in white, so what I'm going to do is I'll just cut them out with my X-Acto knife. I'm using a fairly heavy cardstock for this one since I'm going to be gluing it down to my base. So I've just glued down the flowers which I have cut out using the regular white glue. Now I'm going to use the same paper, which is quite a heavy paper in terms of weight. It would be probably around 300 GSM. I've cut about 3/4 of a centimeter, and I'm gonna just use the guidelines of the flowers and start shaping them. So I take the help of the drawing underneath of each petal, and I measure them using my fingers. I cut them out and I glue them down by applying a little bit of glue on the underside of the edge of paper. I continue the same thing with the small daisy as well. Now that we're done with the petals, I'm going to focus on the central portion of the daisy, which is the disc or the carpel. So for that, I'm going to use these yellow strips of paper. Once again, they're 3/4 of a centimeter, about 120 to 180 GSM. What I'll do is I'm going to make tight scrolls, which I'm going to demonstrate to you. So you have a slot here for the paper to be inserted inside. I'll just show you that. You insert the paper in the slot and you start rolling. Just make sure that you're maintaining the level constantly and be as tight as you can. Once you feel you have achieved a desired thickness, you can just snip off that part. It doesn't have to be straight. Snip it off and apply a little bit of glue. You have to apply very little glue in any of your paper projects because paper is very easy to fix, contrary to what you might think. So this is what you get, and gently just slide it off, and there you have it. So I'm going to use these tight scrolls to make up the center, and I'm going to need quite a few of these, so let me start doing that now. So now that we're done with the two main discs, I'm gonna now move on to doing the three tiny flowers. That's 1, 2 and 3, and I shall create small discs for each of them. So I'm gonna start with using the same yellow strip that we used earlier with my quilling needle. I'm gonna use this and make a very loose coil. If you see, I'm not making it tight because I want this to be a little different, a little flatter. You will be able to understand exactly what I mean once I release it. So you see that? And now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna press this down. Press this, flatten it a little, and when I release it, I have this flat shape, which is what I need. So I snip this off and I shall apply a bit of glue. Oops, I don't need that much. Just a little bit of glue. Paper tends to become very soggy if there is too much glue, so please make sure that you don't add a whole lot. Just maybe a dot or two is enough. So I'm just gonna hold this tight till it just gets fixed in place. I think that should be fine. So this is where I'm gonna place, and I'll do the same thing for the remaining two flowers as well. For making the petals of the rest of the flowers, I'm using this contrasting pink color, and there's a bit of a trick in how you do this. So each petal is made folding with your fingers. It's okay if they are not perfect, they don't have to be. The unevenness is what makes it more interesting. So basically you have this shape. Now I'm going to apply glue on this side, which is going to touch the disc, and also on the edge below. Just gather them and try to fix them with your fingers. Be very gentle. You can use some of your tools to kind of just hold them in place. It's gonna take a while for it to get fixed, so it's alright if you don't get it on the first try. I use my X-Acto knife to apply glue in these tiny spots where I'm unable to reach sometimes, so just tiny dots of glue should do it. Now that the flowers are done, I move on to the stem and the leaves, which I'm doing in green, and I'm using the same kind of cardstock which I used for the white, so it's approximately 300 GSM, and that's it. My D for daisies is complete.
Sabeena, I could literally watch you do that all day. I think I could watch like a 12-hour video of you doing that. It's just so satisfying to watch.
Oh my God, thank you.
Like honestly, and I think I said this before you started too, that like I feel like I could sit there and do that all day. Like you just get so lost in it. And I think the Letter West workshop that I did was 4 hours, and I remember at the end of it being like, I don't want this to end. I could do it all day. So my question
Yes.
for you is like, do you still feel that way when you're doing it, or do you get sort of tired of it?
It's a very interesting question. I never get tired. Like even if my body is tired, my mind is never really tired. And even after the completion of a project, it's very hard for me to stop, because you can actually keep going on and adding a lot of details and a lot of more intricacies. And there is a point when you have to just tell yourself, that's it.
Yeah.
You will stop. So, and because it's paper and it's something that everyone's been, playing with since you're a child, and you've always been having art and craft like ever since you're young, the people enjoy working with paper. So for anyone to see it, I'm sure anyone is really interested and intrigued and feels like trying it out after having a look at it.
Yeah, I truly think that people watching this will want to try it, and I'm really excited to see everybody's creations. So actually that, brings up the next thing, which I was going to say is like, if anybody tries this, make sure that you tag Sabeena and I so that we can see it, because I remember specifically in the Letter West workshop, I don't know how many people there were, like maybe 30 or maybe even more than that. And you didn't give us very much, like very many restrictions on what we could create. You told us make a letter, and you didn't tell us like anything about a theme or colors or anything like that. You just said make a letter, here's how to quill the paper, like go for it. And I remember seeing everybody's creations, and they were all so vastly different. but every single one of them
Yes.
looked so cool because they all just had like totally different ideas, and you can do so many different things with it.
And the thing is, I've realized that when you give guidelines or you actually put down certain rules, it kind of blocks your mind a little bit. So sometimes when you don't have anything in your head and you're doing it from scratch and with total freedom, you're going to try and do something very out of the box. So that's really important.
Yeah. I think what I learned from that workshop, the most important thing is like, it makes a big difference if you give yourself a drawing on the paper before you try and just jump into it. Because I remember trying to build like 1 or 2 letters, with no guidance, and it was really hard. So is that one of the biggest tips you would give to beginners? And like what other things would you say to somebody who's never tried this before?
Yes, I would say drawing at first hand is always helpful because it first starts with what's in your head, and then you're going to translate it and transform your creation onto paper. Secondly, you need to get familiar with the material. Like there are so many different kinds of weight which paper has. And if you have a thin paper, you need to handle it a particular way. Whereas if it's thick, you can be a little more bold with it and aggressive with it. So getting a hand of that and shaping things, plus using how to apply glue and just sort of going wild with it. I mean, having fun is what's basically paper art. Yeah. So just keep these few things in mind and don't be daunted by the idea of making a mess, which is fine in the beginning until you understand how paper works.
I love that advice, and I just, not being afraid to make a mess, but at the same time, one of the other things I noticed right off the bat with it and being around other people that were doing it in the workshop too was like, literally no matter what you do, it looks cool. Like you can't make a bad creation. They all look so cool. So I just want to encourage people, like, really try it, and don't be afraid to just like go nuts and then share your work, because we want to see it.
Yes, absolutely.
So Sabeena, thank you so much for coming on. I'm genuinely so excited to see everybody's creations, and I'm sure you are too. But
me too.
Where to find you and where to tag you and all that kind of stuff, because I'm sure people will want to see more of your work now.
Yes, absolutely. I'm on Instagram. I'm Sabeenu, Sabeenu. So you can tag me. You can share it on your stories. You can tag me there, or anywhere for that matter. I'm on Facebook as well, Sabeena Karnik. So I look forward to see what you create.
That brings me to my very last question of the day before I let you go, and that is, when I didn't know you, I always thought your name was Sabeenu. So where does the U come from?
That's a little funny because in India we always have a habit of pet names. Like you don't want to call somebody by their full name. You want to make like something cute out of it. So you want to add a U to it or an O to it. It's like a very weird Indian thing. So I didn't find my handle. Like Sabeena it was already taken. So I just thought, let me use the pet name. So I just added the U, which a lot of people call me after. So that's the story.
So if I did call you Sabeenu, you would have been like, oh, that's fine. She's just my friend. Like it's not weird.
Of course, because I'm Sabu, I'm Sabeenu, I'm Sabah, I'm Sabi. I mean, I can be anything, but thankfully Instagram only recognizes Sabeenu, so that's fine.
Okay, well, you can from now on call me Beck. What did you say, an O or a U? Like I could be Beku or
Beku. Beku. Yes.
Okay, great. Sabeenu and Beku. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay, well, Sabeena, it was so nice to see you and talk to you, and I feel like we'll have to do this again someday because I just can't stop watching your work.
We'd love to, really. I'm so glad.
Okay, we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Becky.